District Council members acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional custodians of the land and waters, the Ngarrindjeri people, whose ancestral lands are on which we meet today. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of Aboriginal people to country and pay our respects to elders past and present. We also extend that respect to all First Nation people. Thank you, everyone. Item 1's apologies. Apologies are from both Councillor Roundtree, who's still with the Penguins, I think, and Councillor Maidment, who is not well with COVID. Number 2, 10th Street Precinct. There is a report, councillors. Sure, this will create some discussion. I should lead it. I'm well aware that we're bringing back a very similar item to what was dealt with last week. I believe that further information, and in your agenda would have been some letters of support which weren't available to us at that stage last week, may add some weight process going forward around what we're considering. I understand some of us feel that we should put the property on the market as is. If we are to have some control over what goes on that land, that will be one way of us not having much say apart from the standard planning rules, which some of us find challenging some days around that piece of land. We, late last year, adopted unanimously a motion to go forward with the idea of our preferred option was number 6, option 6, when we went to public consultation. I believe the public consultation supported that position.
Mayor, we hadn't made a decision at that stage. No. We put it out for public consultation. There was no decision made on it. No.
There still is no decision yet. There still is no decision. So that was what we decided as part of our strategic plan, is to work on this project. In fact, it's one of the KPIs of the CEO. So we've been to public consultation, and I think it'd be fair to say there's reasonable support, more than 50% around this proposal as you see it today. What is particularly drove, I suppose, me to have to bring it back to this special meeting is the grants process. So if we are to get into the next round of grants, we need to lodge in the next few days. This grant we are going for here, particularly as relates to the letter from the regional state manager, from whatever the regional housing SA is, shows a strong support for our sort of project in this area. It's important that what we're asking for is a grant to pay for the costs of it, the process of it, which you never get in any other form. If we were to go down a different path and just offer the market, it'd be reasonable to expect that someone else or we will have to pay for that part of that process. I'm concerned also that if we don't take a path somewhere along the affordable housing, and I very much focus on affordable housing here, as in for people that work, that we may be left out of future considerations. People, as usual, would say, well, are we keen on this or not with this opportunity in front of us? I'm well aware of people's views and concerns. I trust that the recommendation has been modified from the previous meeting a bit, councillors. I'm open to your consideration on that. My concern is, do we, in the midterm, want to grow? The market, unfortunately, for housing is not, as in rental housing is probably not growing in this area due to reasons we outlined through the housing study over the last 2 years. I am prepared to suspend meeting procedure for whatever period of time to get the discussion right. I'm well aware there's only 5 of you today.
Can I ask a question?
So, yeah, you can start with a question, that's fine, yep.
I'd like it noted, please.
Yep.
Just be okay with the elected members here. My question is, under our code of practice proceeding of council and committee meetings, part 19, section 3B. Once a motion has been lost at a previous meeting, that motion cannot be brought back until the expiration of 12 months and or until the next general election of council. Now, I think it would be a long bow to pull to say that the motion that we've received today is different in its entirety to the motion that was knocked back on the 20th.
Just looking up 19,
Let's start off.
19B was the
19.
3B.
And
19,
also with
that's out.
part 12 of that with the variations, rescinding of motions.
Ash, if you can find that one. I have had councillors a look at the various processes. Whether I've missed that one is a different debate. About to find it.
Through the Mayor, I think you'll find that that only relates to when the motion is to revoke or amend a resolution of council. So that doesn't apply in this case.
Right. Section 19.
Yep, that's the same.
It's always been my understanding, and I think the understanding of all elected members, that once a motion has been put, and it's happened once before, it could not be put again for 12 months.
That's
Or
incorrect.
was it say here, until the expiration of 12 months?
Yeah, so that only refers to when the motion is to revoke or amend a resolution of council, which is not the case here.
So, councillor, I spent a lot of time with the government's office and others going through this, and I can only agree with it now, unfortunately.
So what section was it, sorry?
Right?
What section is it?
Code of practice, proceedings of council and the policies. The council policy.
Yeah. So if it was,
What number is it that says that, Ash?
Okay, so if you're just referring to the regulations, it's regulation 12. If you're referring to our code of practice, it's clause 10.
Yep. Section 19 says the chief executive officer may submit report recommending revocation or amendment of council decision. The chief executive officer may submit a report to the council recommending that the revocation or amendment of a resolution. Chief executive officer must ensure that the report is placed on the agenda for the meeting for which the report is to consider. Provisions of this clause. Person 2, regulation 6, no recommendation for each executive officer to revoke and amend a resolution of council without the same way as the recommendation be proposed by a council member. If the motion is lost, the provisions of regulation 12.4 would apply, and that recommendation the same effect cannot be brought A, until after the expiration of 12 months, or B, until the next general election of council.
So again, as I said, and as you just stated, that's when you move to revoke or amend a resolution of council, which is not what's happened in this case. So there was no decision at the last council meeting.
So lost.
No, it was lost, so there was no decision.
So a motion that's lost is not a decision of council.
Yes,
What are we doing?
we're bringing forward a recommendation for you to make a decision.
No, I mean, why we here as members,
so,
we make no decision.
last Friday at Millicent, the same debate happened around what a lost, or what we used to call lost, light word. And no, probably is better that it was lost, it allows a similar motion to be brought forward. Immediately, actually. Similar motion. What the governance office is referring to is you just cannot, after a motion has been carried, continue by formal motion to try and revoke it. Just can't come every meeting repeatedly after that and try and revoke a motion. You're entitled to come once, but not repeatedly.
Through you, Mr Mayor.
Yep.
How can you say that we didn't make a decision last week? We voted out a decision to go with item 6.
And you didn't vote to go, you didn't vote to say no, you just didn't vote to say yes. Now, I know that's a fine point, councillor, but that is the point.
We didn't vote to support item 6.
That's one interpretation. I'm bringing it back to
That's what happened. It's not an
Yeah.
interpretation.
well, you didn't, I suppose, you're unhappy with my judgment, you're happy with it, I'm not quite sure where the process goes after this. My decision is, given what I outlined earlier, that we can reconsider it. Now, it is not in exactly the same form, but I accept it is substantially in the same form. I'm not here to deny that, but if the result is the same as it was last time, well, the result's the same. But I brought it back for reconsideration for the reasons I outlined earlier.
I've got one more question.
Yep.
We're bringing it back so that we, we're bringing it back so we can apply for the grant. Grant is for setting up.
Amongst a couple other processes, yes.
Yep. What happens if we get the grant, and then as a council, we decide not to go ahead with it as affordable housing? Do we have to give the grant back?
Depends on- through you, Mayor, and Miles might have a different view because he's been working with the grant people. But there is always the option of not accepting a grant. We would lose in terms of time, resources, money, everything else, but there is always up to the point of you have to actually formally accept a grant, which is a signed document, and there's always the option to say no at the end. Again, that would come with possibly some reputational damage that you would have to consider.
We don't go with that. We don't need that $100,000. $100,000 gets used up pretty smartly in setting up something like that. If we put it on the market straight away, we don't need anything.
No,
Through you, Mayor, that's not quite correct.
one of my points would be, look at the public consultation around what will end up there. We just put it on the market, so someone else assumes those risks and incur those costs still. Those costs are nearly all statutory costs. So the danger is that we end up with something we definitely didn't want. Basically.
You don't know that.
No, I don't know that. No, you did right, I don't know that. But the moment we do sell to someone, I can reasonably assume that though. So the challenge is, do we want to have some control over what ends up on that site? Vis-a-vis, in effect, take the money and run.
Still got control through planning SA.
Well, I've been having enough meetings in the last week to know how much control we can effectively have. We don't have as much, if it, the developer could bring it within the rules of the thing. Councillor Bland, will you? Nick, I'm going to ask you to really grab hold of your mic and get it close to you, please.
Look, I have a couple of questions.
Yep.
Just clarity, who made the decision on the 2575 and why is it 2575? Because it would appear to me, I've just been back for another look down there, that there'd be no reason why this wasn't a 50-50.
Miles, Miles can answer.
So the grant application, significant amount of criteria for this affordable housing and around contribution by council. Go in with only 50%. I think dilutes our chances of being successful. I mean, I struggle with giving 25%, to be quite honest, in terms of the validity of. So you can see that I compromised in terms of the criteria for the grant application, and giving the grant application its best chance of being successful. And a compromise knowing that the elected members generate some income, immediate income.
New Ridgeway.
Split of the land and the creation of 500 square metre blocks, which is the optimum for a detached dwelling in that zone. So that's the other reason. Subdivision. So both of those factors, grant application criteria, validity of the application, the chance of the application being successful, noting also that we've had the letter of support from the Office of the New SA, which is very, very impressive to get that. Their eyes are on Tarleton Bend. That's good to see. To be less than 3/4 of the land is getting the affordable house. As I said, it loses its credibility in my mind.
So in selling the land, if we sold all of the land, can we not put caveats on it?
Well, there were, in the options there, you would lose value the moment you start putting caveats on a developer. And I don't know how much value you would lose, but you would lose substantial value by putting those caveats. So there's commercial confidentiality, and I can't tell you we can't talk because it's being recorded about what the value of the land is, but I would be suggesting we'd probably lose anything up to 20% by putting caveats on the land.
Councillor, shouldn't assume that an affordable housing project won't build houses, which could be for sale.
Sorry?
You shouldn't assume that a affordable housing project can't build some houses that are for sale. Besides,
Well, we're not party to any of that information, so we don't,
we have been presented with some what is possible.
by one company, yeah.
Yeah.
My concern is also looking at some of the housing stock that is not necessarily under affordable housing, but community type style housing across the council area, and the poor condition and the poor long-term care of some of those housings if they were to rent any of this out versus, the actual affordable housing for working families. I do have some concerns the further out of Adelaide. In fact, Adelaide's got significant problems. We would only be worse off.
So perhaps it's important we focus on this is affordable housing for working people.
I'm just clarifying that.
Yeah,
yes.
over that.
And I would like to see that
terms of-
written in
yeah.
gold.
So that,
Part of the opportunity to acquire $100,000 of federal government money is to be able to draw up an agreement, framework and agreement for a affordable housing project that stipulated council's requirements. What would occur if we was go away, not just to buy the land, that's only probably less than half of the 100,000, is to getting legal advice, drawing up the framework agreement between council and affordable housing provider. There's affordable housing provider because they're the only people who are able to get Commonwealth grants funding. And that framework can have any number of requirements that council desires, housing mix, arrangements for ownership, maintenance, open space provision within the land as well. You'll have the same situation where the more caveats you put on it, you'll probably opportunity for the to be maximised for the affordable housing. But I think as you've seen before, these projects have been delivered quite successfully throughout the country and in South Australia. They produce good quality, normally 3-bedroom detached dwellings. My personal view in Tailem Bend is what's missing is a little bit of medium density as well. Single occupancy dwellings are a really growing, significant part of the housing mix moving forward. Anything up to 50% of new housing is actually going to be occupied by single people in the future. And I think this particular block lends itself to somewhat of a mix. But as the Mayor said, unless council has got itself to a point where it's choosing something other than the market, determining that, it doesn't have influence.
Okay, so my other question following on to that is that the grant is for actually 3 components of the project, of 3 projects, not just for affordable
So
housing.
the grant in total, in absolute total, is $500,000. 100,000 of that is towards the dentistry. Yes,
So-
there are.
And those, the 3 projects, I think, that are in the precinct grant, which includes the housing, those 2 projects would fall over if we don't apply.
So we're putting this application, subject to the decision today, we would be putting the application in at the end of the week to March full. We would have to scramble and fill a $100,000 hole, basically, with other valid projects in the Tailem Bend precinct.
Sorry, you've lost me there.
So
It's got a minimum, sorry, through you, Mayor.
Minimum
The
size,
actual grant
that's-
application, it's got a minimum,
And the minimum,
$500,000.
the 3 projects that's already listed, plus other. Is that what you're saying?
We'd have to find another project, which is proving somewhat challenging.
So there is always the opportunity with a grant at this stage of the process to probably maybe look at a couple of other things that would supplement the whole project. What I think Miles is saying is that affordable housing is probably the most attractive element of this grant application for us to get over the line. This is a grant that 500 councils across Australia will be looking at quite closely as well, because I think the Mayor mentioned it's probably one of the very few occasions where there's some grant funding for the planning stage of a project. Generally, you have to come along and you've shown your plans, you've done your master plans, you've done your shovel ready, and it's for the doing. This is much more about the planning stage, which is a very rare occasion. But it does come with a caveat of $500,000. And the most attractive part of it from a Commonwealth Government point of view would be the affordable housing component.
You just clarify then that we actually don't know what's fully in the 500,000 potential grant.
Try us again.
So we actually don't fully know. I mean, we know of 3 projects potentially. Am I right?
I'm confused about what you're referring to, Councillor.
The grant,
The other projects.
the other
that form up
projects
the-
that make up the 500. At the moment, I know of 3. I think I get the impression that we don't know, we've got a gap, and
So we haven't got a gap.
we've got
confused.
roughly, $508,000 worth of projects. So those projects, obviously the 10th Street project, you have the highway corridor, you have Dixon's Reserve, we've also included an engineering study for the Old Ferry Landing as well. So these are all projects that, again, within Tailem Bend, there's opportunity to 100% funding for design activity, planning activity.
Can you just run past me what the other projects in this precinct plan are? Because I think one of them was the first time ever hearing of it. Could you just run that past me again?
So we've got 10th Street, we have the highway corridor.
Yeah.
Significantly, we've got the old ferry landing, there, in order to, be able to understand and no, there's no commitment from council in regards ferry landing. In order to understand what a conservation of that ferry landing would cost, you need to do some engineering studies. Now, to be able to do that, you may be able to leverage off.
So this grant is seeking funding to pay entirely for the engineering studies around what would be needed, not actually doing anything, but seeking funding to find out what would be.
First screen is all about pre-development activity. There is no physical delivery of any activity. It is incredibly unusual, one, that you actually get a grant application that allows you to apply for that type of activity, and two, that you get a grant application, 100% of the funds, no contribution from council.
So bottom line, cost to council in doing this is nothing.
It's nothing, no.
So,
We even, sorry, we've actually able to include labour costs in the application as well. So
so,
it doesn't even have in-kind costs.
so let's say we get the grant. We've been approved, we've got our 500, and we come back and we say, well, we don't think the ferry landing is viable, we don't want to do these other projects. This is all very time consuming because sometime down the track, this may be a new council, and they go, well, we don't want to do that at all. So what happens then? What's the liability?
Positive is we haven't spent ratepayers' money finding
Sorry?
that. Positive is we haven't spent ratepayers' money finding that out.
Well, we've spent taxpayers' money, but anyway. My question is really, well, whose bucket? My question really is that we need to be sure that the other projects are the projects that we believe will benefit Hale and Bend area effectively, and I'm sure there are others in there that could.
There's always others.
Through you, Mayor, we gave a briefing to council on those very projects that Miles outlined on the 26th of September. They were all included in that briefing.
So,
Completely
If-
confused.
no,
Sorry.
this
was
is
it
this is about getting everything shovel ready.
Yep.
Someone is prepared to offer a grant to get things shovel ready, which is most unusual.
So, Ms. Mayor, I understand that. The briefing that you just alluded to, Bridget, in September, was it? Was it made clear in that briefing that they were the projects that would go forward to this grant?
Looking at it now, because I asked that.
Okay, we must be thick as two bricks.
No. It does highlight challenges of a briefing is not a meeting, always.
So can I just ask through you, Mr.
Yep.
Mayor? If I fully understand this, we're not going to do any work. This is for all the paperwork. $500,000 worth of paperwork on a ferry landing that should have been bulldozed 50 years ago, on a block of land that we should be getting money for, not spending money on. God, I can't believe it.
So the challenge, as you outline, is the amount of paperwork in anything. Ferry landing, proven extremely robust during a flood. I can tell you,
Floated off.
well, I kept on looking for it, but,
Mention
Yeah.
something about the ferry landing. Like it or not, the ferry landing is state heritage listed. Like it or not, is an area that's under our care control. Now, that's a burden, there's no doubt about that. It's a burden. It's just like all the councils that have jetties as well. It's a burden and they look upon those and in some cases they wish the state would take that off them. It won't happen. The concern really that I have about that jetty is that it's a hazard. So we saw in the flood, yes, it did stand up, but I'm positive that, it presents as a navigation hazard. It is an ice. here's an opportunity, at least without any cost from council, to work out what is the minimum that's required to stabilise that structure, make it safe, not just for people in the river, but for people on the bank as well, and to make it less of an eyesore and still allow it to tell a story about the past, which a lot of people that find that very interesting and valuable. So just leaving it as it is forever and a day is unlikely to be an option because of its listing as a state. Fact is, it's under council's care and control.
And next we'll have Wellingtonville, the old Wellingtonville.
We haven't at this stage, though.
We haven't at the moment yet.
I know you took.
That'll be next.
Councillor Qualman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a comment or question, the information I interpreted was that it's not actually not only the ferry landing, it's actually Dixon's Reserve. Is that more correct?
At the top of that.
Yeah. So we're not only talking about the old ferry land, we're talking about Dixon Reserve. And regarding the recommendation, in point 1, and it says Tarn Bend subject to provision of adequate open space and acknowledgement of Frank Clapp Memorial. Provision of adequate open space, should someone define that? Reserve amount, you know what I mean? It's a bit each way.
Through the chair, this is the beauty of actually the $100,000. A good component of that is to develop that agreement, that framework, and in fact, council can define that. So when there's 75% of the land that is identified for affordable housing, council can stipulate that it wants X amount of open space, that it wants X type of arrangement of dwellings. That largely will be up to council.
May I keep continuing, Mr Mayor? Yeah, well, that's what I like about that. We've got some sort of control over that, because as we're well aware, when you look at the public engagement results, majority wanted open space followed by affordable housing or some sort of housing relief, because it is a problem in the area, and we need housing, but we also, people want some green space. So this is why this is heading to me in that direction. Thank you.
Just talk about $500,000 of grant opportunity. We had discussion before about how Mopalonga ended up with that amount of money. Sort of reminds me of got to be in it to win it, really. It's
Mr Mayor,
The buildings.
need to be things like, I have a lot of sympathy for the parents. A lighthouse down in my area, in a similar position, it's going to need something sooner or later. However, I feel that when we go down to some of these things here, the highways, one of them who ends up with having to maintain it, the ferry, sometimes you may not, better you don't know, better you do. I take the risk factor on board that Miles has indicated. But at the end of the day, I'm just wondering what we're delivering Vale and Bend. That is actually really deliverable. My other question is, why do we not do parking bay on the eastern end of town as a project that we absolutely say? Sorry.
some point, Councillor.
Yes, where it could have done with, well, we want to do that anyway. So some of the projects where we're going to spend money on, these ones here are potentially still high in the sky. We may get the money, we may not. We may never be able to do some of them other than just sell the land at the end of the day. And so out of this, if you're looking at Ferry Road, the landing, some of the extra work, I mean, there's so many little projects with the streetscapes around Taylor. We could take some of that out. I think that would be long-term advantage of going further forward in that rather than some of the other precincts we're looking at. And I guess from that point of view, personally, I have no issue with affordable housing managed properly. I have great concerns about the management properly in the long term, and I'm sad about that, but the further away you get from the city, the harder it is.
So, Councillor, I'm just looking at what we agreed to. Briefing. The master plan of the streetscape. It is the corridor entrances and the southern lookout, which is what we'll be referring to in terms of what you were saying, that southern car park. Detailed design, 10th Street, Dixon Reserve and the linkages of
I think that just needed to be very clear in this
Yeah,
room.
of that to town and the old ferry landing. So old ferry landing is a heritage consultant, not a normal consultant, unfortunately, and they are, words hen's teeth to be bonus there, they're pretty hard to come by.
I think there's 2 in the state or 3 in the state.
Well, in this particular case, the engineering study, the specialist, Marine, that's where the difficulty comes in. I will say the reason that, it may not have been clear is because what we're talking about today is 10th Street and not all the others.
I know, but
So-
they all roll up into that one
I-
grant package
yeah,
that we're going to miss
I
out if we
understand
don't go
that,
down
but
that
my
track.
understanding is that was already endorsed by council at the workshop. And that's why over the last three to 4 months, the application we've been putting together is in accordance with the direction council provided previously.
Can I make a few comments? I'm going to,
Yep.
may I, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah,
Just touch on this with the workshops. We cannot make decisions at workshops and we are treading dangerously close to doing so.
Through you, Mayor, that's not quite correct, but we did call a special meeting because we wanted to alert you to the fact that we needed to put in an application.
100%. I just want to put that out there that we are treating workshops as informal decision-making at times, and I'm uncomfortable with it. And it's been highlighted in a number of things that have been said today, so I'm just going to put that out there.
just if I could stop us there for a second. So this is the challenge in this phase we're in now of planning. And our decisions around planning and cost changes and our streetscape plans for three of our 4 main towns, that our understanding, I understand exactly what you're saying, our understanding of a workshop, and then it's brought forward to this position. At some stage, we don't give our staff the room to look for the opportunities and then present them to us. It gets hard to, we're going to debate every project at every point. It is difficult. I understand our difficulty at the moment in our process of capital reporting of what we're doing, and I see we're moving on that, but also on decisions on what I would call not non-road capital projects in the going forward process. And that's where we're at today. And last thing I'd say is in the electoral cycle we're in both federal and state, the next 6 months is the crucial time.
If I can continue
Yep,
through
certainly.
this, I'd just also like to highlight that at the November meeting, we endorsed, I note this is in the original briefing, in the original agenda for the last meeting. Council has endorsed resolved a preference for a hybrid option of selling a portion of the site on market, retaining another portion for an affordable housing project. Yes, technically we did do that. However, my recollection of that discussion at that meeting was that we did it to put it to public consultation. That wasn't necessarily a position of the chamber at the time. There was some discussion around that we needed to select an option just to get it out. But I just wanted, it's been brought back to that as that we already made that decision. And while I'm actually comfortable with that personally, I know it was not the conversation in the chamber at that point in time. There was a discussion that we needed to just say, yes, we'll do this to get it out for public consultation. I am somewhat happier with this motion because it does bring it back to us to make a decision going forward. My strong concern with the motion that came up last week was that was it. And I was pretty uncomfortable with that. I do think in this case that funding, if we can utilise that at no cost to council to develop the project further, would be beneficial, but I have some strong views around, similar to what Councillor Bland said, around the type of housing I want to see going forward and potential for ownership for people. So I certainly wouldn't want to progress anything unless we had a pretty clear vision around what we were trying to do with that land. That's my comments for now.
Okay, I'm still in a bit of an open session and won't be long, we're going to formalise.
One quick question that, it says a further report will be tabled with, I would have thought tabled might, hoping that the word table means.
Well, I'll read it. Or a council
When you
report
table
is.
a document, you don't necessarily have full discussion, but anyway. I'll just take that as commented on.
quite happy to put decision before the,
Much prefer that in terms, this may go into other councils down the track. I mean, nothing happens overnight. So if we're not all here, staff are not all here, I'd like to see that in there, thank you. Yeah, just,
What were those words mean?
Well, just the difference between table and the determination here is, Ashley, have you got a view?
Table is for decision, but we can be more overt if you need to be.
Mr Mayor, can I just ask a couple of questions?
Yep.
As long as it
They're
goes
probably
on
the worst
more
ice coffee in
confusing.
Australia.
Yeah.
Yep.
The $500,000 is the grant we're looking for
That group of
putting
projects.
plans together.
Yep.
Is that easy way?
Yep.
First time I've heard of Dixon Reserve in the process. I've got a in-depth study done by the council, by UDS on Dixon Reserve, which cost us something like $100,000 6 or 7 years ago. Still got the copy of it if you want it. The second thing, this is the first I've ever heard about Fred's Landing, because Fred's Landing is
Fred's Landing.
probably. Not Fred's. Sorry?
On the
Very-
Wasn't Fred's, okay.
No, no, it's not Fred's.
Very late, okay. The streetscape is already done, I thought. It hasn't been gone through and passed?
The streetscape has been at a broad sense, not of the next detailed down engineering sense. Streetscapes haven't been engineered, they've been, what's the right word, help me someone.
So remember,
they're
through you,
not sure
Mayor,
already.
Yeah.
vision,
the streetscapes are very broad, and we've had this conversation in the chamber, very broad, strategic view of what you want as a council. You do need to do detailed design then. There are 3 stages to any project: the strategic vision, the detailed design, the delivery of the project. You can't do anything without your detailed design.
And without the data, grant nowadays.
Through you, Mr Mayor, can I ask you, can you just bring it up to 3 again, please? Helen? Following the development of the plan of divisions, a further decision report will be tabled with council. Now, does that mean we can change it then? Are you sure?
Always with council.
Because we made a decision last week that wasn't a decision.
You-
So
There was no
is this
decision.
going to be a decision or not?
Well, there was no decision made last week. I need to reiterate that. I know that counterintuitive.
I disagree with you.
I know you and me will have a discussion another day about this, but we didn't make a decision. That was one of the issues.
Okay, so can I ask a question? Because
No, you can ask it of me and I can say yes.
that's what I'm saying. Can I ask a question, Mr Mayor, based on
Councillor O'Hara's position.
Councillor Harris' question? Because on that basis, I'm comfortable with it, that we still have that ability to make that decision. But what if we were to expend the grant and have the groundwork done on the basis that this is not,
What we wanted,
yeah,
what we expected.
yeah, if we spend that money and go, no, look, this is not where we need to be, what's the position for council at that point in time?
Can just come back as a report. And council could say no.
Through you, Mr Mayor, this is exactly what I with earlier. If that happens and we decide it's not what we want, we don't want to go ahead with it, do we have to give that money back?
Already spent it.
Already spent it, yeah.
I wouldn't think so.
There is always, this is not a, what's the word, static or immovable object. When you work with the grant people, the grant provider, it is always a constant conversation. Remember when we wanted the 250,000 for the LRCIP, it was backwards and forwards. Council made the decision that that's what you wanted to do with it. But Tammy and Tracy and Kelly probably had 15 conversations with the grant provider, backwards and forwards, massaging it. So none of that is ever set in concrete. This, then we would bring back, given we know the view of the chamber, we would bring this back at various steps along the way before the actual grant was made. But we have to have it submitted by March of next week to be in the March consideration. Otherwise, it's gone then till the end of the year.
You're still missing my
Well,
question.
no, I'm not missing it. We will bring it back when we think there's a critical point before we actually take the money. We can do that, can't we?
We'll take the money, yeah. But does that mean we'll miss out on the whole $500,000?
And if
in this scenario at the moment,
Yes.
because minimum grant application the federal
500.
government's put in place is $500,000. Now, I can tell you, this was last year at the local government in Canberra conference. Most of the small country councils quickly realised they were excluded. So the only way we can get up to the $500,000 is to bulk up a project, for want of a better word. Now, given we feel all those projects are on our agenda, we don't feel bad about that, do we? But the point is, one of the things in the current political environment, out of Canberra at least, which is where the money usually comes from, is that they're looking for bigger minimums.
I'm looking at Miles. The answer to the question is probably, we will take the grant for the 500,000, do the design plans. You don't have to give that back because we've done what the grant has said we would do.
That's, okay, so that's
They've got
what,
it.
that's what I'm trying to get at. So if
That's
we,
what
Trying
I'm
to think
trying
about
to
how to
get,
take,
Yeah, right.
so we put up our hands for the grant covers off these things. We spend 500,000 to develop those plans. We have fulfilled the obligation of the grant.
Okay.
Then we come to council and say, this is what the planning is. You say, yes, I like it, no, I don't, whatever it is. And then there's another stage, which is the doing. And that's where another grant process has to kick in
Okay,
because
that
otherwise
answers
it's rate revenue.
finally
That
I've
makes
got an
sense.
answer.
Sorry, I'll be just trying to think about, sorry, I'm a bit slow.
I'm going to have another question, and I'm sure Miles will answer this. I'm probably not all that happy with approximately in point 2. It says surplus land representing approximately 75%. Now, that could go either way. I'd like to see it up to or maximum of.
So, I mean, I did use the word deliberately
loose.
because the plan of division will be based on orderly development.
Sorry?
The plan of division will be based on orderly development and meeting the planning and design code requirements, which will have to take into account things such as infrastructure provision and the like. So I didn't want to hit a hard number. I'm quite happy with an up to. I'm quite happy if you want to change it to up to 75%, because I can play with that.
Up to.
Likely to be something, 70 to 75%, but if you go up to, I'm more than happy with that.
I'm happy to change that.
We haven't got a mover or a seconder, so we
Well, I'm
changed.
requesting that it be changed.
I'm looking at the rest of the elected members. Everyone understands
Mr.
point
Mayor,
2? Yeah, just give me a second just to give, if everyone understands what that means, we'll change that to up to instead of approximately. That's what you would like, councillor?
Thank you.
Councillor Arthur?
the financial ramifications to the council, if we do this, where this subdivision will be purely for affordable housing.
No.
Well, not, it's not,
Up to 75%.
Up to 75%.
up to 75%, but that is still going to be, are we going to do the subdivision side ourselves?
No.
Right? The second thing is, we will then put it on the market with those encumbrances.
What encumbrances?
Well, the encumbrance, if it's part of the thing, it has to be up to 75%. Yeah,
Go on the market.
Is it-
75%,
We select
so
the
25% would be free market. This may be, so let's say we come back, plan of division, 25%, council may decide to release that in totality, don't divide it up, one single block, 25% on the market, no encumbrances. The 75% would be subject to the appropriate affordable housing process that the Commonwealth Government have set up, which in most cases where a council involved, is a council going through an EOI tender process to engage with an affordable housing provider, and council's contribution would be the land and nothing else. And then the successful housing provider does everything else. Everything else.
So is there no income at all for the council out of that 75%?
No, the benefit is the generation of dwellings.
Understand that, but
ability-
no
yeah.
cash.
No, because, I mean, again, you don't do this for cash. You're not doing this to,
We're not a benevolent
What-
society. You do
no,
it if
yeah,
you need cash.
but the long-term economic is from people living Murray Bridge, people living here, spending their money here, playing sport at the football club in Talon Bend, kids going to school in the primary school. That is the economic benefit you get, and that is significant. But you don't get cash in the bank on day one.
So what does council, I guess, to answer that, worker? Families, can't remember the discussion about rates. Sorry, I don't even know if it was asked. I can't.
I mean, there are some types of housing which is rate exempt, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be the case. Again, you know, the $100,000 of this $500,000 will be to develop a framework and an agreement that meets council's requirements. No, that's okay.
No,
I'm still-
I think we're not, just on this point about your rateable, I wouldn't see this, and my understanding is that these will still be rateable properties, not exempt under that process. And the LGA is looking at this process around
But if it's
properties that
Unity,
are exempt from rates.
if it's Unity Housing who present us with first they take it on, they actually get a 75% rebate, don't they?
No, I don't, no. Not our reading of it.
What do you,
Don't confuse social housing with affordable housing. It's an
Yeah.
important part here.
And if they run it, it's classified as community housing and the same as Tabarat and all
No.
those.
no,
And
no,
No.
no.
Difference between affordable and
Difference between affordable and
the old housing.
the old house. And affordable and let's use the word social for the sake of this debate. No,
I'm just-
that is a difference.
I'm-
Lots of social housing is not exempt from rates either.
I'm a bit slow today, Mr.
No, you're
Mayor.
not. I will never accuse you of that.
Slower than normal, sorry.
No.
This goes through. We get the 100,000, we do the design.
Hmm.
Right? What happens then?
We come back to
What
council.
money's council up for then?
We're still up for nothing.
Nothing.
We
So
haven't done anything.
that block's gonna be cleaned up by one person who buys a block.
Yeah, but
All the infrastructure, the
If-
house is
if-
gonna be
if that-
put in.
If that's the decision of council,
Sorry?
if that's the decision of council, then that's the case, yes.
So council will be doing it.
No, I said if that is the decision of council, then that would be the case. So if council decides to put the block on the market as is, then yes, the person who purchased it would be knocking down the buildings and clearing up the tennis court. This is all at the moment, just, no money being expended by council having the opportunity to do a plan of the division, council having the opportunity to put together a framework for affordable housing project and bring that back to council for a decision on where, and go from there.
Here we go for questions. You worked out I had the worst iced coffee I've ever had.
Yeah, I might just say one other thing though, Your Worship. At the moment, there is not a single rental in Talon Bend. I don't see that changing greatly over the next 3 years. We've got, we've got some significant projects, Nick Mumford's project, that will create demand for jobs. We could easily see 100 jobs created in the next 3 years for Talon Bend. At the moment, we've got nowhere for these people to live in Talon Bend. That is, if we don't, and it's not just up to us, I mean, we do support other developers that are looking to buying land, but here's an opportunity to deliberately focus on affordable housing and maybe deliberately affordable housing for that income bracket that's around the, you know, $60,000 to $80,000.
Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you to Miles, now, regarding the 25%, and as I interpret it, it's, 5 houses which will be open market, correct? Now, we'd get, receive money from the sale of the land plus get rates, is that right? Yeah, please.
The planner division, in order to keep it as simple as possible, would be dividing the one allotment into two. 5%, the other would be 25%. Bring it back to council. I wouldn't actually even apply for that division. I'd just do a planner division, paper division, bring it back to council. Council then needs to make a decision as to whether they divide that 25% further into 5 housing allotments. That's when council, if they decide to go to the further land division, they would have to, you know, spend some money. 100,000 doesn't create 5 additional blocks to the market. You would look at that stage purely on a cost-benefit basis of going further and dividing it. I think there's good value in a single block of 25% of that land. I think that still presents good value to council, and that would sell well. The reason that again, you know, that piece of land would be logically would be the piece of land fronting the Princes Highway.
So through you, Mr Mayor, to Miles on that, then there is a cost to council before this.
No,
And that would
only
be to subdivide that land.
only if council decides to go further with that division and divide beyond.
Subdivide it.
Yeah, so do another
No,
subdivision.
to cut the 25% off is going to be a cost.
No, the
Why not?
25% would be included in this 100,000.
It's that next stage.
It's going further, further and dividing that 25 into another 5.
So it'll probably cost 10 or 12 grand.
That's right.
Okay, here we go. One of the last things just come into my head is we have actually asked for us as the tail and end part of our council to join the Greater Adelaide Regional Plan. Now, I'm not quite sure if we don't want to be part of housing what we're trying to achieve there. I'm looking for any more questions, or I ask someone to move something. I've got a recommendation which has got a few word changes in it.
Just one
Question?
Do you think by virtually the council going to the housing development situation, which status quo really is, going to affect other developers coming in? Because you've already got some development projects been applied for. Do you think that, well, maybe they'll think twice about coming into Tail and Bend? How big is the market?
Well, the market's looking pretty healthy. It really is looking pretty healthy. And my fear would be that what would happen is that we're not able to meet the demand, especially if a project like Nick Mumford's project gets up and there's 100 workers and their families looking to establish as close to Tail and Bend, if not in Tail and Bend. The housing development that is currently being considered, the land divisions, are for rural living and for most likely 800 square metre blocks with standard 4-bedroom dwellings on them. Probably a slightly higher end, maybe 600 grand, that type of in the residential area. What we're talking about here are smaller blocks and potentially medium density, and again, that single occupancy as well. You really have to take notice of that. we're not going to be able to meet our housing targets purely through 4-bedroom detached dwellings on 800 square metre blocks. That won't do it. We need a mix. And the developers are not talking about the medium density. This is where the affordable housing opportunity comes in.
Just as a point on that, you know, like you've got Vino Energy, what, by a whole 6 people now, as they told us out there, as a recommendation. The other thing that I've gone back through the records, and according to my records, there's been 14 houses built in the last 2 years. Now, I know COVID's in there, so that's going to affect that. So that's not a huge amount of houses to be built.
The growth strategy showed very clearly what's happening to the market. You only have to drive through Murray Bridge to see clearly what's happening to the market. You shouldn't judge the future on the past. Otherwise, you'll not take up the opportunities that are before you. There is every reason to believe Tail and Bend can hit a 30, 40 houses per year without any difficulty if we look at what's happening 15 minutes down the freeway in Murray Bridge. If we take notice of what's happening where people if they cannot get rentals, or if there is a rental available in Mount Barker, they can't afford it. So where are they coming to? They're coming up to Murray Bridge, and now they're coming to Tail and Bend.
But that's happening in every regional town. And that's what the government pushes, the regional areas. Mount Gambier is exploding. The other towns, Millicent is marking time. Narraport's actually jogging backwards because that's why Murray Bridge is so
Tail and Bend.
great, because they're a regional town,
So
not the big shopping centres, and that's what people
I think, Councillor, you've answered your own question. The challenge is, as that Port Council housing report said, was that the market is reluctant to come outside of the large regional centres in the South Australian terminology. Reluctant. Definitely very reluctant in the further out parts of our council. So your question is, if it's going to be, is it up to me sort of thing here, are we prepared to back ourselves in? Are we prepared to? On a project like this, which at this stage, we're not actually risking any ratepayer money? Or are we saying we'll leave it to the market when the market's shown to have not always acted in our interests? That's the way I see it. We are starting to use up the vacant lots of land in this part of this town, at least, that have been left. And if you look at it in an interesting way, most of this town was set up by the railways, and therefore they built every block at the time, or every block they could build on. So we are sort of seeing the number of vacant land. So if we're not prepared to back ourselves into, and if we want to be part of the Greater Adelaide plan, want to grow our rate base, this is one way forward. I'm of the view, I'm looking for last question, I'm looking at Councillor
Well, I'm actually,
Bland and seeing,
you're talking about the Greater Adelaide region and including the Tail and Bend area, and I accept that, I understand that.
well, we're not formally part of it. We want to have the benefits of it.
But we have other townships that could do with worker housing. Are you seeing, and I guess again, this is probably to the CEO or to Miles again, what are you seeing in terms of the land around Tintinara where there's, you know, a huge business there, or even Nelpin Menengi? What are you seeing looking at this model for those townships? Potential. And I know it's 64, we haven't done the homework, but we know what's there.
So through the chair, I mean, the beauty of the growth strategy, it's done and the supply analysis. I do believe council should invest in keeping that data fresh. I went to a strategic planning session with Plan SA yesterday, and I was very pleased that they have the regional plan, that their Kangaroo Islands regional plan they've just completed, which is digital. It's the first suite of digital regional plans. So, it means that it can be updated very quickly, but the way to update will be make sure that each individual council has got a similar type of product, and our growth strategy does that. Each town had its different characteristics. Tintinara, certainly, you can see the rural living allotments. Be very interesting to see how they sell. We do need some residential land, I believe, in Tintinara. Meningie has a classic ageing population, young population, ageing population. I think we're picking up clearly that retirement living in Meningie, there is demand for that.
Worker housing now,
And yeah, worker
no
housing.
rentals available. Anyway,
I mean, the main thing, and Wellington East, clearly Wellington East, if it's provided with appropriate infrastructure, has significant upside in terms of growth. It's just really tail and bend in terms of its proximity to the Greater Adelaide region and getting that similar wash of activity from Murray Bridge. It does show up that its growth already is healthy, and its potential is extremely good. And I think investing in this town has, significant support for the rest of the town, just purely by growing the population. Again, the figures, 2050, the population of this town could be heading towards 5,000, and the population of the entire district could be heading towards 10,000. That's doubling. But a bulk of that growth will likely to happen in Tail and Bend. There's actually science behind that. It's not me picking a number. It's quite a reasonable figure to believe in and invest in.
So, yeah, we've got to try a model. This is a model to try. To answer your question around how do we provide housing? If we're nearly done, I'm looking for a mover, and Councillor, you did get those amendments. Are you prepared to be the mover? Well, anyway, I'm taking any mover, but I'm looking.
I'll pass the word on there
So you'll move the motion with that slight alteration?
with all the alterations.
With all, but yeah, but principally let me. Right, let's move it. I'll get a seconder, please. Councillor Qualman is the seconder. Councillor, so I've moved back into formality, sorry, councillors. After a very long session.
Under that.
Yeah, no, I just did by getting a motion. I think we've had adequate time to discuss. Councillor Bland, you want to lead the formal process?
Actually, I think I've said
You've
enough.
reserved,
I'm in favour of affordable housing. I'm very nervous around some of the other components until everything comes back with the grant. I have to say at this point in time, I'd want full discussion with council when all of that comes back about how that might look prior to it actually going out for any discussion further if we get the grant, particularly around, I want to know what's going to be in the, potentially what we're asking developers or anyone for reports, what's actually going to be in them. That probably sounds like a hard task. We've got staff, so I'm sure somebody will tell me are more than competent to do that. However, I think for transparency, I'd like to see that before we went out. Should we be successful?
should we be successful? Councillor Kwame, you're the seconder.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor, and I concur with Councillor Bland. Like the other members, I've found this a little bit complex, and it was good that we had a session to discuss this and help ease our minds. And I do believe, and I said it before, that as the respondents have said, they wanted some green space, and also we are in desperate need of housing. So I would see probably hacking those two issues. So that's why I'm seconding it. I also would like to say that one step at a time, and that we're kept in the loop and work our way through it, and hopefully we get the grant.
Any other councillors wish to enter debate? Councillor
Thank you,
Peets,
Mr.
I
Mayor.
think there's your finger up.
Yes, I'd just like to, I'm probably going to support this at the moment on the basis that there is no cost to council if we are successful in getting the grant. And that, as councillor O'Hara teased out during discussion, once the grant has been expended, we are not committed to actioning any of the groundwork undertaken through that grant.
Through you, Mayor, this is very specifically two parts to a grant. Now, I think I said to the Mayor earlier in the day, that you can put in for the first stage of a particular project. It's not necessarily to take it to the second stage, or you could take an entirely different project to the second part of the grant. So it is flexible in that sense. So there is nothing that locks you in. If you do stage one and you're successful and you have your designs and everything done up, that there's an expectation you go to the stage two. You can, and it's designed that way, but there's no, it doesn't have to be that way.
If something more urgent within the precinct was to come up in the meantime, we could add that into a second stage and pull something out.
Anyone else?
Right,
Councillor
so
O'Hara,
one little question.
you got a question? Your question's different, yes?
If this gets up, is it a decision?
No.
Is it a decision or is it not?
If it gets up, yes, if it's voted for, there's a difference between voting for something and voting and something being lost.
It's lost.
I think you're asking, councillor. Anyone else for or against? I'll give the deputy mayor, because he. Won't look forever, councillor.
Not looking.
Good vote.
Okay,
Yeah, so.
I'm looking at councillor Bland, as she'll close.
Closed.
Right, councillors, the motion is on your screen. You will notice it's fractionally different to what was in the agenda. Straightforward. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Motion's carried. Thank you, councillors. For coming back today. Fully flesh this out. I much appreciate that. Wishing councillor Maidment well, because she was really not well.
We get sunstruck.
Right?
We get sunstruck when we go outside, it's your fault.
Maybe, as long as you don't get hit by a Corella.
We're patting on.
With that, I
Could only wish.
close the meeting at 5. Thank you, everyone.
What's in that again? The thing. This is on for the industry.
Well, that's